I'm your bedtime historian, and tonight we're traveling back to an era where a missing iPhone isn't your biggest problem. It's finding pants made of bark, avoiding saber-toothed tigers, and somehow making friends without accidentally inventing war. Welcome to the Stone Age. No toothpaste, no takeout, just your sheer will to survive. Imagine waking up surrounded by nothing but wind leaves and the distant sound of something growling. Your breath fogs in the cold morning air. Your feet sting from stepping on twigs. And you can't remember a single survival tip except don't die. How did ancient humans do it? And how will you? If this strange little plunge into prehistoric panic makes you feel strangely cozy, go ahead and press like and subscribe. Think of it as your first modern tool, shaped like a thumb, surprisingly powerful. And if you're half awake and listening from a cozy blanket fort, what time is it, where you are, and which ancient civilization would you least want to wake up in? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You come to with a gasp, face down, in cold moss skin, pricked by wind and goosebumps. There's no shelter, no bag, and definitely no coffee. Around you, the world is quiet, but alive. Trees shiver overhead. Something rustles in the ferns. You're not sure what century it is, but judging by the lack of road noise, the answer might be none of them. This is not a dream. Your clothes are gone. Your watch is missing. And your memory is a blur, as if someone yanked you backwards through history and left you here like a dropped sock. The sun above is pale and unfamiliar. Insects chirp in ways you don't quite trust. You begin to move carefully, quietly. Each step is a minor negotiation with Styx rocks and your own limited bravery. You are cold, but not freezing. Hungry, but not starving. You're in the early stages of a very long, very awkward camping trip through prehistory. The first question isn't what year it is. It's how long do you have before night falls? Early humans, according to most archaeologists, weren't particularly speedy inventors. Fire took hundreds of thousands of years to reliably control. Language came slowly, tools even slower. But what they did have, almost instantly, was adaptability. Your new companions in this era survived not because they were strong or smart, but because they were just clever enough not to die first. You might imagine the Stone Age as all saber-toothed tigers and mammoths, but the truth is far stranger and more mundane. The period spans millions of years, roughly 2.5 million BCE to about 3000 BCE, depending on where you are. Most people lived in small nomadic bands, rarely numbering more than 20 or 30. And despite popular portrayals, they didn't grunt constantly or drag each other by the hair. Some scholars continue to debate the exact social structures of early hominins, whether families stuck together, how they shared food, and what they did with their dead. The archaeological record is a jigsaw puzzle, missing half its pieces and chewed on by wolves. But one thing is clear: cooperation mattered. Those who helped each other lived longer. Those who didn't. So you look around: forest, rocks, maybe a stream in the distance. You don't have shoes, but your instincts are waking up fast. Find cover. Get warm. Don't get eaten. A bird calls above, shrill and anxious. You mimic the sound without thinking. Somewhere deep in your brain, a 200,000-year-old part of you nods in approval. Your journey has begun. A chill rides the wind as you stumble forward, bare feet sinking into damp soil. Your first mission is simple yet all-consuming. Build a shelter before the sky forgets how to be blue. You've barely taken 10 steps When the terrain begins shifting patches of bramble clusters, of jagged stones, a fallen log covered in fuzzy green moss. Your prehistoric brain might be waking up, but your modern legs are already tired. Still instinct whispers louder than logic you need cover. Not for privacy, but for survival. There's no tent, no cabin, no instruction manual titled, "So You've Been Thrown into the Paleolithic." What you do have is a growing awareness of your own squishiness. Without protection, you're exposed to more than just cold air. There's rain insects and things with very sharp teeth. So you scan the trees. One in particular, large and half-fallen, offers potential. Its roots are gnarled like sleeping snakes, and its trunk arches sideways like a wooden ribcage. You test its stability solid enough. If you could gather branches, stack leaves, maybe wedge a few rocks for support, yes, it might work. Not a house, not even a hut, but a den. A place to breathe without looking over your shoulder every 5 seconds. Shelter, as anthropologists often point out, is one of humanity's earliest technologies. Long before hammers or metal people shaped landscapes to keep the weather out and the warmth in. Caves, overhangs, and brush shelters were common solutions. In colder climates, some groups piled animal hides over stick frames, creating domes of warmth and smell. There's no scholarly consensus on whether early shelters were built communally or solo. Some archaeologists argue families shared duties, while others believe individuals built their own crude nests. What is clear is that shelter wasn't optional. It was the difference between making it through the night or becoming a chew toy for something with claws. You bend to gather sticks. The forest floor offers plenty, though most are damp and stubborn. You snap a few long ones between your knee and elbow, stacking them against the log. It's messy, chaotic, more artistic panic than engineering. Leaves pile on top a carpet of forest litter that smells like mushrooms and yesterday's rain. The work slows your heart, gives you purpose. A small clearing emerges, a shallow cavity framed by bark and improvisation. You crawl inside. It creaks, but doesn't collapse. The ground is rough, but drier than you expected. For a moment, you allow yourself to exhale. Of course, this is only the beginning. Your shelter is laughable by architectural standards, but in Stone Age terms, it's a success. Temporary, makeshift, but it might buy you a few hours of sleep, or at least keep the wind from nipping your toes off. Then a detail ants, tiny ones parading across the inner log, like they've lived here for generations. You try to flatten your bedding, and succeed only in making it lumpier. Still, the space is yours now. You've claimed a corner of the ancient world and made it slightly less hostile. At some point, a hawk circles overhead. You spot it through a gap in the leaves' wings, spread like prehistoric scissors, eyes sharp as obsidian. It doesn't see you, or maybe it does and deems you unworthy of its attention. Either way, you're still here, not quite safe, but hidden. You settle back into the gloom, breath slowing. Shelter made for now. The night hasn't come yet, but it will. The air smells faintly of rain and bark as you peer out from your ramshackle shelter. The light is beginning to fade just a shade, but enough to make your nerves buzz. You realize, with a jolt, that you're going to need warmth. And unless a friendly caveman shows up with a Zippo, you're on your own. Fire. You know it in theory. You've seen people do it on TV, maybe even tried it during that one awkward camping trip. But this time, there's no fire starter gel or survivalist uncle guiding your hand. It's just you, some rocks, and a growing sense of urgency. You crawl from the shelter and begin scanning the forest floor. What you need, you dimly remember, is something dry and fluffy tinder, something eager to burn. Your hands move like they've done this before. Dead moss, the fuzzy kind clinging to bark, might work. So could dry grass, though much of it is damp from the morning mist. Bark peeled thin curls into delicate strips in your palm. You test their brittleness, yes, promising. Now for the hard part, a spark. You rummage for stones. Most are useless, smooth and dull. But one catches your eye, it's sharp-edged with the glint of quartz. Another, darker and denser, has that gritty texture of flint. You don't know the names for any of these yet, but your prehistoric gut approves. Fire, according to archaeologists, was likely first mastered by Homo erectus nearly 1.5 million years ago. Not invented lightning did that, but controlled. At first, perhaps they kept natural fires alive, feeding them like needy pets. Later came sparks, percussion fire starting, where one stone strikes another, producing heat and light. It was a turning point, and not just literally. Fire changed everything cooking safety community. Still, there's no scholarly agreement on exactly how early humans discovered how to make it themselves. Some theories say it was accidental, born of stone tool making. Others suggest it was mimicry, seeing sparks, and experimenting until one caught. Either way, you're about to find out just how difficult it is to reproduce several millennia of innovation with clammy fingers and rising anxiety. You kneel, position your stones, and strike. Nothing. You try again. A dull click. Your wrist stings. Again. Then finally a flash. Tiny. Gone in an instant. But real. You adjust your posture, lean over the little bundle of moss and bark shavings like it's a newborn. Strike. A spark lands. The moss blackens. You blow gently, terrified and hopeful. It smokes. You exhale more firmly this time, and suddenly a flicker of orange. It dances, trembles, then catches. You stare as the tinder glows, flames licking up like they've missed you. You feed it gently. Twigs, dry leaves, more bark curls. A proper flame emerges, wild and wobbly. You sit back, stunned. Congratulations. You've invented fire again. The warmth kisses your arms. Smoke curls upward, curling through the canopy. You hold your hands near it, not too close. Already you've learned something. It's mesmerizing, comforting, a little miracle in the middle of nowhere. There's an odd sense of power in this moment. Your shelter may be small, your clothing non-existent, and your future uncertain. But right now, you've done something enormous. You've changed your odds. As the fire crackles, you feel a strange companionship with every ancient figure who ever crouched over embers in the dark. Alone, maybe, but not forgotten. Your fire crackles beside you, its glow keeping the forest's whispering shadows at bay. But a louder whisper, your stomach demands attention. It's been growling for hours, and despite the romance of prehistoric life, hunger doesn't feel poetic. It feels urgent. The forest around you is full of green things, but which are food, and which are slow-acting revenge. You stand, slowly, stretch, and begin a cautious search. There are no vending machines, no mushrooms labeled edible or instant regret. Just instinct luck and a few blurry memories of survival documentaries. First, you spot something familiar. Berries. Small blue-black clusters hanging on a shrub. They look like blueberries, but do they taste like home or hallucinations? Your hand hovers, then pulls back. Better not risk it just yet. Rule number 1. If you can't identify it, don't eat it. Not unless you're also prepared to invent ancient gastrointestinal medicine on the spot. Instead, you test the terrain with your eyes. Fallen logs often host insects. Gross, but nutritious. Lifting one, you find beetles. Some scurry. One plays dead. Another just sits there as if waiting to be chosen. You hesitate. Then, with the reluctant grace of someone who has never been this desperate for protein, you pop it in your mouth. Crunch. Insects, believe it or not, are a legitimate food source. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans regularly consumed beetles' grubs and ants. They're rich in fat and protein, and once you get over the legs, not entirely unpleasant. Many cultures still eat them today, roasted, spiced, or ground into flour. You continue foraging. Roots become your next discovery. Thick, knobby tubers, buried just below the surface. You pull one free, rub the dirt off on your thigh. It's starchy bland, maybe a bit bitter, but not poisonous, not obviously. A tentative nibble later, and you decide edible. Barely. Still, it fills a hollow space inside you. Nearby under a bush, you find a small patch of nuts, hazelnut-like hard-shelled and stubborn. You use a rock to crack one open, and inside the meat is fresh. Dry, but promising. You pocket a few for later hoarding already, like a seasoned gatherer. Some historians suggest that foraging was more than a survival tool. It was the beginning of pattern recognition. People learned which plants grew near water, which bloomed in summer, which made them feel sick, or sleepy, or euphoric. Foragers passed down knowledge, and those who didn't listen, well, nature sorted them out. Still, not every edible thing in the forest announces itself. You dig beneath leaf litter and find pale grubs. You pull bark and uncover ants. With growing bravery and decreasing appetite, you try them all. Earthy, oily, slightly sour, like chewy walnuts that moved once. As the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows across the ground, you head back to your fire with a handful of nature's least glamorous snacks. You roast a few roots, dry the nuts by the flames, and lay the berries aside for future cautious testing. You eat slowly, aware of every bite, your stomach surprised by food quiets. Not full, but not empty either. A temporary truce. Oddly, there's pride in this meager meal. You've gathered, tested, survived. You didn't die of hunger. Not yet. Tomorrow may bring better luck or worse mushrooms. But tonight, you fed yourself in a world that doesn't care if you make it. That's something. Your belly holds a few bugs, a burnt root, and the kind of tentative hope that comes only from not being poisoned yet. But just because you feel okay doesn't mean you're safe. Out here in a world still run by instinct and trial and error, every leaf and berry is a gamble. You crouch beside your fire watching the flames stretch long shadows across the forest floor. Nearby, a patch of delicate flowers sways in the breeze, white blossoms, heart-shaped leaves. Pretty, innocent looking, possibly lethal. In the Stone Age, knowing what not to eat was just as important as knowing what to forage. It's estimated that early humans regularly sampled new plants, often with dangerous consequences. They didn't have field guides or YouTube videos, just their senses and sometimes unfortunate test subjects. There's a theory that poison knowledge developed through painful experimentation. You eat a little of a strange fruit, nothing happens. You eat more stomach cramps. Your cousin eats a lot, your cousin stops moving. Harsh lessons, but effective. Some scholars argue that groups passed knowledge through observation, who got sick, who didn't. Which plants made people hallucinate or feel numb. Over generations, this created an unwritten pharmacopoeia, an ancient database of edible versus deadly. You decide to test your own version of prehistoric caution. Picking a small unknown plant, you rub it on the inside of your forearm. Nothing. A few minutes pass. Still nothing. Then you touch a bit to your lips. Wait. Your skin tingles slightly, but it could be nerves. You decide not to eat it. This flower can keep its mysteries. Other plants, however, are more familiar. You spot something that resembles wild garlic, long green shoots, with a sharp oniony smell. It's strong, but smells like something your ancestors would have loved. You nibble the edge. Spicy, but safe. Into your food pile it goes. As dusk gathers, the forest seems to lean in closer, its edges blurrier, its secrets darker. You remember an old rule: bright colors. Bitter smells and milky sap are often signs of danger. You see berries in fiery reds and electric purples, tempting but suspicious. Your inner caveman grimaces and moves on. In one corner of your camp, a strange plant with fuzzy leaves catches your eye. You crush a leaf between your fingers. It smells sharp, medicinal. Maybe useful, maybe not. But you save a few leaves anyway, just in case your next experiment goes less than smoothly. Poison wasn't always the enemy, though. Some prehistoric people used toxic plants deliberately to stun fish, to tip hunting spears, to sedate injured companions. One famous theory suggests Neanderthals even buried their dead with medicinal herbs, though whether that was healing or ritual remains debated. You think about that as you arrange your maybe edible, definitely not lethal collection. It's strange sitting here in the quiet, relying on senses you barely trusted a few hours ago. Smell, taste, touch tools as powerful as any stone blade. You've learned something today, even if it's just how to avoid dying by salad. And in a world where misjudging a mushroom could end your species, that knowledge is survival. The fire hisses as you add a fresh stick. The air has turned cooler and night is near. You press your back to the shelter wall and breathe deeply. So far, your tongue hasn't gone numb. That's a win. For now, the forest has spared you. Tomorrow, who knows? The wind sharpens as twilight slips in, turning your humble shelter into a dim cocoon of bark and smoke. You've eaten, built, and kind of survived, but now a darker thought presses in. What if something hunts tonight? You need a weapon. Not to start a fight, just to look less like a snack. You step out from your nest, scanning the ground for something long, straight, and vaguely pointy. A stick, mostly. But in this world, the right stick might mean the difference between early human and early dinner. A few paces into the trees, you find it, a narrow branch, shoulder-length solid, slightly curved. It's imperfect, but promising. You swing it experimentally lightweight, but with heft. Now for the upgrade, a point sharp enough to send a message, preferably to anything with too many teeth. Sharpening wood without metal feels like cheating at frustration. You sit beside your fire, the chosen branch in your lap, and begin grinding the end against a flat rock. Over and over, like filing your nails with a sidewalk. Hours seem to pass. Eventually, the tip narrows to something you wouldn't want poked into your side. Not exactly Excalibur, but you'll take it. Stone-tipped spears didn't appear right away in history. Early humans, particularly Homo heidelbergensis, used simple fire-hardened wooden spears as early as 400,000 years ago. They'd char the end in flames, then scrape it smooth to strengthen the point. You decide to try it. Holding the tip carefully above the fire, you let the heat darken the wood, watching it sizzle slightly before pulling it back. The result is a smoky, blackened point. Not beautiful, but effective. You test it against a patch of moss jabbing softly. It bites in. You feel oddly triumphant. Your first handmade weapon. Somewhere your ancestors nod approvingly. Adding a stone tip, you realize would be another level of complexity. It would require binding materials, vine animal sinew, or resin, and tools to shape both wood and rock. You're not there yet. But it's something to work toward, assuming you live long enough to become a full-time Paleolithic craftsman. There's ongoing debate among archaeologists about when spears evolved from stabbing to throwing tools. Some point to evidence of fire-hardened javelins in Germany. Others argue such conclusions are too optimistic. One thing everyone agrees on: the spear marked a shift in survival. With reach came safety. With distance came dominance. You carve a small notch near the bottom of your spear. It's meaningless decorative, maybe, but it makes it feel more yours. You plant it upright in the dirt beside your shelter, an ancient version of locking your car at night. Weapon made you feel a sliver safer. Not invincible, just slightly harder to eat. The forest has quieted as if watching. Your fire pops. You glance at your spear again, imagining it in use, maybe fending off a curious boar, maybe poking at an overconfident raccoon-like creature from the dawn of time. You don't want to use it, but you're glad it's there. For now, it's a symbol, not of aggression, but of readiness. You're adapting, slowly, clumsily, but adapting. The stick, once just wood, is now part of your story. A line drawn in the dirt between you and everything else that breathes. Twigs crack in the distance. You freeze, breath, held spear clutched like a security blanket for grown-ups. The fire throws flickering shadows across your shelter, and somewhere just beyond its light footsteps. Not heavy enough to be a predator. Not clumsy enough to be a wild boar. Something human or close enough. You crouch, low eyes darting toward the trees. Then you see them, bare figures, half glimpsed between trunks. 3 or 4, maybe more, wrapped in animal hides smeared with mud and ash. They move like wind in tall grass, fast, quiet, purposeful. You've made first contact. It doesn't feel like a National Geographic special. It feels like trying to bluff your way through a costume party where everyone else actually is, from 30,000 years ago. You raise your empty hand slowly, palm forward. Universal sign of please don't turn me into stew. They pause. The tallest steps forward. His eyes flick to your spear, your fire, your body language. You can almost hear the mental arithmetic: threat, food, something else. First contact with other humans during the Stone Age would have been a cautious ballet of gestures, expressions, and possibly grunts. Trust was never automatic. These people had their own group, their own rhythms. Outsiders could be dangerous carriers of disease, thieves of resources, or worse, rivals. Some researchers believe early humans and Neanderthals occasionally coexisted, even interbred. Others suggest contact was often violent. There is no scholarly consensus, just fragments, bones, tools, genes that hint at long-lost encounters under trees just like these. You stay still, trying to radiate innocence. A weak little forager with uneven hair and excellent intentions. Then movement. The tall one crouches and makes a low, rhythmic sound. A grunt, but almost melodic. Another member of the group circles your fire, inspecting the setup, like a critic in a prehistoric home show. You mimic the crouch. Copy the sound, sort of. It comes out like you've swallowed a frog, but it's the effort that counts. They don't laugh. One offers you something dried meat, dark and wiry. You accept it with a nod, unsure whether to chew it or wear it as armor. The exchange is simple, silent, a small ritual of trust. Your fire, your spear, your wild-eyed confusion, they've seen it all before. Maybe they were watching longer than you knew. There's no handshake, no philosophical exchange about tools or fire or the meaning of berries. Just a mutual awareness you're both human, for better or worse. Eventually, they retreat, melting into the forest as quietly as they came. No words, no explanation. You're left holding a piece of mystery meat and a story that no one in your time would ever believe. Later you'll wonder if you dreamed them. But the footprints remain bare and deliberate in the dirt, real. Some archaeologists argue that these early encounters shaped everything trade war community. That understanding a stranger without killing them was the beginning of civilization. Others believe it was just survival calculus. If you weren't a threat, you were tolerated. For now, whatever the case, you survived your first social interaction in the Stone Age, and you didn't end up in a cooking pot. You sit back by your fire now, with company in your memory and meat in your hand. The forest closes in again, quieter than before. Safer somehow. You're not alone out here. Long after the strangers vanish into the underbrush, their presence lingers like the scent of smoke on your skin. You're left staring into the fire, replaying every movement, every glance, every non-word that passed between you. The silence that follows feels louder, now emptier. But something in your brain has shifted. They didn't speak, not in the way you know it. No sentences, no names. And yet you understood them. Or at least enough to avoid becoming an unpleasant anecdote in a Stone Age skeleton dig. Somehow you communicated, without language. It makes you wonder if, stripped of grammar and vowels, what's left turns out quite a lot. Gestures, posture, the direction of a glance. A hand offered palm up can mean peace or a request. A frown can mean no. A crouch can mean I'm not a threat or I'm about to spring. It's a game of silent signals where one wrong move could earn you a stone to the head or a seat by the fire. Linguists have long debated the origins of language. Some believe spoken words evolved gradually from gestures and expressions. Others argue that physical language came first with vocal sounds, developing later for nuance and range. There's still no scholarly consensus, but your awkward evening pantomime, it fits every theory. You decide to experiment further, if only to pass the time and keep the creeping dark from feeling too heavy. You mimic one of the gestures you saw earlier, a slow wave across the chest. Maybe it meant fire, or friend, or don't eat that weird moss. Hard to say. Still, it feels meaningful. You start cataloging your own gestures, pointing, waving, mimicking the shape of an animal with your hands. You grunt softly, then louder. You try varying the pitch. High might mean safe. Low might mean watch out. Or you could just sound like a confused bear. But it's not about sounding smart. It's about being seen, understood, even if that understanding is only partial. Early humans may have relied on visual and tonal communication for survival long before true speech developed. The furrow of a brow, the wideness of the eyes, the rhythm of footfalls through grass, all of it part of a wordless language older than history. And here you are inventing it all over again. To test your theory, you make a simple motion, you press your fist to your chest, then point to the fire. You repeat it, then sit back, waiting for a sign from the trees. Nothing comes. But you feel a strange satisfaction, like a toddler who just learned how to say more with their hands. In this moment, the idea of conversation feels almost unnecessary. The forest hums. Your fire pops, and the gestures feel enough. Not complete, but enough. You wonder what your visitors called themselves, if they even had names, if they sang around fires or told stories in mime. Did they have jokes? Was there a specific gesture for oops? I stepped in dung again. You'll never know. But maybe communication is less about knowing the words and more about trying anyway. The night is thicker now, ink black between the trees. You lie down beside your fire, tracing invisible signs in the dirt. A spiral, a handprint, a circle, messages to no one and everyone. The fire dims to a low smoldering amber as the forest pulls its shadows tighter. Somewhere, an owl calls soft and sudden. You jolt, and then you remember it's not just hunger, cold, or confusion that might undo you out here. You could be hunted. It's not paranoia, it's survival. In the Stone Age, you weren't always the apex predator. Sometimes you were the one rustling bushes listened to. Sometimes you were the thing being stalked. So you lie flat and start thinking like prey. Camouflage in your world meant fancy print hunting jackets and cartoon face paint. But here it's mud leaves and silence. You smear ash from the fire on your arms and legs, not because it looks fierce, but because it dulls your skin's shine. You rub dirt into your palms, smear moss across your shoulders. You're beginning to look like a member of the underbrush community. Ancient humans relied on stealth, not strength. In open terrain, speed was useful, but in dense forest, invisibility was better. Some tribes wrapped themselves in furs stitched with grass. Others used body paint to break up outlines. Even lying still in just the right way was a skill passed through generations. There's no firm archaeological consensus on how widespread camouflage techniques were, but evidence suggests that Paleolithic hunters understood light shadow and scent far better than we often credit. A few bent ferns could mask a hunter's form, a handful of mud the difference between life and a lion's lunch. You study your surroundings, the colors, the shapes. Then you do something odd, you stop moving. Completely. You slow your breath. Sink into the leaves. Let the forest forget you're there. At first, your heart races. A twig snaps somewhere to your left. Could be a boar. Could be a predator. Could be wind. You don't know, and that's the point. The animal watching from the trees doesn't know either. You're blending in. You're being forest. Some researchers argue that mimicry, acting like the landscape, was one of early humanity's greatest weapons. It wasn't just about sneaking up on prey, but avoiding becoming prey yourself. The best hunter was invisible. The best survivor, forgettable. You shift slightly, testing the noise your foot makes against the soil. It's soft, but noticeable. You try again, slower, gentler. Eventually, you learn how to move, like a ghost. One toe at a time, heel lifted breath, held. You're no ninja, but you're quieter than you were yesterday. Near your shelter, you experiment. You bury yourself under leaves. You press your body against the log's shadow. You crouch behind your spear, now leaned upright like a sentry. If something approaches, maybe it'll pass you by. There's pride in this ridiculous stillness. You've made yourself less appetizing. Somewhere far off, a low growl echoes, faint. Maybe not aimed at you. But it's a reminder that this game isn't over. The idea of defense in the Stone Age was often less about fighting back and more about not being noticed. Early humans built camps in high places near water, surrounded by brambles. They slept in groups for warmth, but also for safety. You're alone. But with camouflage and quiet, you're less alone than you were. The fire flickers lower. You douse it slightly, keeping the smoke thin, just enough to cling to your skin and mask your scent. Then you crouch in your nest of leaves, eyes half shut. You might be prey, but you're not easy prey. The silence doesn't last. It never does in places like this. Somewhere beyond your camouflage, beyond your mud-streaked skin and leaf-crusted hair, a branch breaks with unnatural weight. You sit motionless. A second snap follows. Closer. Slower. Heavy. You grip your spear, and then it emerges. Massive shoulders, a snout like a shovel, fur dark and matted, a creature that looks like someone left a rhinoceros in the freezer too long and then defrosted it mid-roar. It snorts steps forward, and suddenly you're face to face with a woolly rhinoceros. Or maybe it's something else. Prehistoric taxonomy isn't your strong suit right now. You stay utterly still. Prehistoric animal encounters weren't just possible, they were unavoidable. The Stone Age world teemed with megafauna cave lions, with paws the size of your face, saber-toothed cats that could shatter bone with a bite, wild boars that didn't just look angry, they were angry all the time. And of course, mammoths and woolly rhinos, the lumbering armored tanks of the ancient world. Some scientists still debate the frequency of human megafauna interaction. Were these creatures actively hunted or mostly avoided? One theory suggests our ancestors targeted the weak or sick strategic and less likely to be trampled. Another posits that most encounters ended with humans running for the nearest climbable object. You are currently near no climbable objects. The rhino, or whatever it is, stares past you. Its breath steams in the air, each exhale a puff of prehistoric irritation. It doesn't see you, not fully. Your dirt, your stillness, your lack of movement all trick its senses. But you can smell it. Earthy, pungent, like wet hay in bad moods. Its ears twitch, its eyes shift. You hold your breath until your ribs ache. Then slowly it turns, walks away. You wait 5 full minutes before you even exhale. When your legs stop shaking, you crawl back to your shelter and collapse beside the fire pit. You haven't moved much in the last hour, but your body feels like you ran a marathon barefoot backwards uphill. Ancient humans had no fences, no walls, no electric buzzers to keep nature out. They lived alongside it, sometimes within it. To them, danger didn't come with warning labels. It came with claws, or tusks, or 3 sets of nostrils, and a desire to test them all on your campsite. And yet they endured. Found ways to share space with giants. Some even carved cave paintings of these beasts, not as villains, but as neighbors. Powerful, dangerous, but not evil. Just part of life. You wonder what it must have felt like seeing a mammoth crest a hill, or watching a pack of hyenas circle your campfire. Terror, yes, but also awe. You're beginning to understand both. Tonight's encounter leaves you shaken, but wiser. Your spear, though simple, now carries weight. You place it beside your body as you lie back. A kind of prehistoric nightlight. Not much, but it helps. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a low howl. Then another. Wolves. Maybe. They sound far away. You pull the remains of a pelt, a leaf-draped bundle you fashioned earlier, over your shoulders. It's not warm, but it's something. You close your eyes, heartbeat slowing. Today you stared into the eyes of ancient power and lived. Tomorrow may be different, but for now, you're still here. The chill bites harder as night deepens. Your fire is a faint flickering memory, and the darkness presses in like a wool blanket soaked in dread. You roll onto your side, mouth, dry lips cracked. That's when it hits you. Not hunger, not fear, but thirst. A deep, aching thirst that feels older than language. You need water, but this isn't your tap it and forget it world. There's no plastic bottle hidden in the moss, no kitchen, no chlorinated backup plan. Just a forest, a pounding thirst, and a creeping awareness that dehydration may kill you before any beast gets the chance. You rise slowly, muscles stiff. The air smells damp. That's promising. You listen head tilted. Somewhere faint, a trickle water moving over stone. You follow it barefoot, silent. Early humans developed uncanny water-finding instincts. Many modern tribes still use similar cues, listening for frogs, watching where birds land, observing insect patterns. Bees, for instance, rarely stray far from water sources. You file that away. Bee following may become your next strategy. After what feels like miles, but is likely only a few hundred paces, you find it a narrow stream, winding through a shallow gully, moonlight pooling on its surface. You nearly run, but pause just short. Remember, not all water is safe. You kneel, dip your fingers. It's cold, glorious, but could be full of unseen threats. Protozoa bacteria, microscopic parasites with ancient names and unpleasant agendas. You sniff it. No sulfur, no rot. Promising. Still caution wins. You scoop water into a curled leaf and let it sit for a few minutes watching. Nothing moves. No oil sheen. No bugs doing synchronized swimming. You drink slow and careful. It tastes like stone root and survival. Access to clean water was a daily concern for Stone Age people. They didn't boil it, not until fire became more than novelty, and they certainly didn't test it in labs. Some anthropologists believe early humans developed gut microbiomes adapted to their local water sources. Others argue they used plant filters like crushed charcoal or sand to strain impurities. But overall, water was a gamble. You drink a bit more, then wash your hands and face. The cold sharpens your mind, cuts through the fog. Your thirst fades, replaced by a deep, satisfying ache in your bones. You didn't just drink. You succeeded. Heading back, you mark the path, scratching a crude symbol into a tree with a rock. It's not art. It's a memory, a breadcrumb for your tomorrow self. As you settle once more into your shelter, you reflect on the absurdity of needing to learn water again. Something so basic, so foundational. And yet, until an hour ago, you had no idea how to find it. There's a strange pride in that. Researchers often overlook water in favor of flashier survival stories hunting fire war. But water was the real currency. Campsites formed around it. Arguments began over it. Entire migrations followed its seasonal rhythms. Civilization may have sprung from the banks of rivers, but survival, that started with one desperate human sniffing the air and hoping to hear a drip. You pull your leafy pelt tighter, lips wet now, skin damp and soothed. You are for the moment not thirsty, not dry, not doomed. Water has returned to your world. You don't know how long it will last, but tonight it was enough. Sleep doesn't come easy, not here. The ground is unforgiving, a patchwork of roots, cold dirt, and stones that conspire beneath your back. Your shelter creaks with every gust of wind, and the fire down to embers throws more shadows than warmth. You shut your eyes. You open them again. Minutes pass like hours. Then comes the noise, a distant howl closer than before. You freeze. Your breath shortens. Another sound follows, not a predator's roar, but something worse. Silence. The forest has gone still. You sit up slowly, peering into the dark. Your eyes strain for movement, but it's too murky. There could be a bear 5 feet away, or nothing at all. But it's the unknown that gnaws at your sanity. This is the truth of prehistoric night. Modern life coddles us with streetlights, alarm systems, and weather apps, but in the Stone Age, nightfall was a gauntlet of instinct and improvisation. Darkness meant danger. It stripped you of sight direction, and sometimes reason. Some archaeologists believe that early humans developed storytelling not just for fun or teaching, but to pass the night without losing their minds. Sitting around a fire swapping tales of gods or monsters was a way to keep everyone awake, alert, and bonded. Others argue that singing and soft rhythmic noises served as primitive lullabies, not for comfort, but for keeping nearby predators guessing. Your night includes no such concert. You lie down again, cradling your spear like a lumpy teddy bear. The fire sputters its glow, fading to a whisper. Cold creeps under your layer of moss and ash. Your muscles ache. Your teeth chatter. And still no sleep. You begin counting. Not sheep, but footsteps, the number of paces to the stream. The number of leaves in the roof. The number of breaths between each crackling ember. Then your nose twitches. Smoke. At first it's faint, then stronger. Your heart spikes. Did something catch? You sit upright. The fire hasn't spread, but a log collapsed, pushing embers closer to a dry patch of leaves. You scramble, stamping it out with your bare foot. Pain. Panic. Relief. Another near miss. Some scholars argue that night was the real enemy of the Paleolithic. Daytime offered tools, movement food. Night brought stillness and the creatures who thrived in it. Wolves, hyenas, owls, things you couldn't see until it was too late. There's no consensus on how early humans coped. Some stayed awake in shifts. Others dug shallow pits to sleep in low and hidden. You with neither tribe nor trench simply endure. Eventually, the forest stirs again. A distant branch falls. Something screeches overhead. Maybe a bird, maybe not. The wind picks up, shaking the trees like old bones. And through it all, your body begs for rest. You curl tighter. Sleep comes not as a blanket, but a truce. A brief moment when your eyes close, not out of peace, but exhaustion. You drift for minutes at a time, waking with every gust or twig snap. And yet when the first hint of dawn colors the horizon, you are still here. Tired, sore, but alive. You've survived your first Stone Age night. The sun's first light barely filters through the trees when you realize you can't move your leg. Panic flares. You sit up fast, too fast, and the pain shoots through your shin like lightning wrapped in thorns. You clutch your leg and wince. It's not broken, but badly twisted. Swollen. Purple blooming beneath the skin like a bruise-shaped flower. You try to stand. Fail. Try again. This time, you make it to 1 foot, leaning heavily on your spear. Every step is agony. Now what? In the Stone Age, injury wasn't just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. No clinics, no antibiotics, no painkillers, unless you counted screaming into your hand. And yet early humans survived all kinds of trauma-broken bones, infections, even childbirth with stone tools and zero sanitation. How through ingenuity, through community, through bark vines, and an intimate relationship with their surroundings, you limp to your shelter and lower yourself beside the fire pit. Time to improvise. First a splint. You break 2 straight sticks about the length of your shin and align them on either side of your leg. Then comes the binding. You search for vines, thick, flexible, unthreatening. They loop around the sticks and your leg holding everything in place. Not tight enough to cut off circulation, but firm enough to stabilize. It's crude. It's ugly. But it works. Anthropologists have uncovered prehistoric skeletons showing signs of long-healed fractures, evidence that someone took the time to immobilize the injury and care for the person long enough for bones to mend. In one famous case, a man with a severely deformed leg lived years past the injury, suggesting a group helped him survive. Compassion, even then. But you are alone. So you dig deeper into your shelter, into your own stubbornness. You recall the fuzzy-leaved plant you collected earlier. It had that sharp medicinal smell. You crush the leaves, rub them gently over the swollen area. The scent is strong, soothing. Whether it's medicine or just mental, you'll take it. Pain management in prehistory may have involved chewing certain barks like willow, which contains salicin, the natural compound behind aspirin. Other plants were brewed into teas or poultices applied directly to wounds. Some were narcotic, some toxic. The line between healing and hallucination was often a guess. Your methods aren't refined, but they feel intentional. You rest watching the wind dance through your leaf roof. The fire crackles. Your leg throbs, but the splint helps. You won't be sprinting after mammoths anytime soon, but at least your mobile hobbling counts. Injury brings clarity. It forces patience, planning, humility. You begin to rearrange your camp with this new limitation in mind, moving your supplies closer, reinforcing the lean-to, patting the floor with extra moss. Every task takes longer. Every movement costs energy. And yet you're not helpless. Some scholars believe that prehistoric medicine marked the beginning of science observation, trial and error, passing down what worked. Others argue it was as much spiritual as practical rituals, chance herbs bound by belief. Both views likely hold truth. You look down at your leg, now a sad but stable collection of sticks and vines. It hurts. It will continue to hurt. But it will also heal. Because even here, even now, you're learning, adapting. One splintered step at a time. The forest has changed. Or maybe it's you. With a splinted leg and a sharper eye for survival, you begin noticing what once seemed invisible. Rocks, for instance. Not just the sharp ones that drew blood yesterday, but useful ones, shaped by chance into edges, angles, possibilities. You study a smooth piece of flint with a narrow ridge running down its center. It fits awkwardly in your palm, but feels intentional. You strike it gently against another rock. A flake shears off, thin, curved, sharp as a cat's whisper. And just like that, you've made your first tool. Tool making didn't come from boredom or brilliance. It came from need, hunger, danger. The daily absurdity of trying to open a marrow-filled bone with your bare hands. The oldest stone tools, the Oldowan type, date back nearly 2.6 million years. They were simple hammerstones, flakes cores. But they worked. You try again. Another flake. Smaller this time, but razor-like. Soon your little collection grows a scraping tool, a crude knife, a jagged-edged chopper. Each sits in a row beside your shelter, like prehistoric pets, sharp, moody, and incredibly useful. You use one to cut bark into strips, another to crack open a nut you would have smashed with a log yesterday. It's not elegant, but it's effective. Some archaeologists argue that tool-making wasn't just a skill, it was a revolution. The act of transforming raw material into something purposeful may have helped shape the human brain itself. Others suggest the opposite. Our growing brains enabled us to imagine things not as they were, but as they could be. Either way, tool use marks a turning point in our species' story. You even find a bone likely from some creature, long gnawed and forgotten. It's smooth on one side, ridged on the other. You press it into wet bark, leaving a curved impression. Could it carve wood-shaped leather pry grubs from hiding you don't know yet? But you test it anyway. Soon your shelter includes not just fire and food, but tools. The forest floor becomes your workshop. You place promising stones near the entrance, hang vines from branches to dry stack peeled bark into little bundles. You're not building civilization. You're building options. There's a comfort in that. One tool you craft is absurd, a crooked stick with a sharp flake tied to one end using wet vine. It barely holds together. But when you jab it into a log and lever it upward, bark peels away in long ribbons. You grin. Ugly, but clever. A poor man's crowbar from the dawn of time. The line between trash and technology blurs fast. What yesterday was just debris, bone fragments, broken rocks cast off shells is now a toolkit. You begin thinking differently. A split branch becomes a trap. A pointed shell becomes a scoop. Even the scorched end of a stick becomes a charcoal pencil, which you use to draw a spiraling pattern on the inside wall of your shelter. It's meaningless, but it's yours. And that, perhaps, is the strangest part of survival. Once your belly is full and your limbs are mended, your brain starts to wander. Not to escape, but to create. You lie back beside your stone flake knife, your bone gouger, your fire-hardened spear. In a world without language, you've found expression. In a world without tools, you've made your own. And in a world that barely knows you exist, you've left your mark. Smoke rises in slow spirals from your fire pit, curling toward the canopy, where the early morning sun filters through in golden patches. You sit cross-legged spear. Nearby, your splinted leg stretched stiffly in front of you. Around you lie tools scattered like ancient breadcrumbs and remnants of your leaf bed. You've lasted longer than you thought you would. But now comes the final question. Could you actually survive here? You chew slowly on a roasted root, tougher than you'd like, but familiar now. You've adapted not elegantly, but functionally. You've learned to build forage, signal, stay quiet, move carefully. You've felt the gnaw of hunger, the sting of cold, and the hot pulse of panic under moonlight. And somehow, you're still breathing. Most modern people wouldn't last 24 hours in this world. That's not a slight, it's a fact. Without tools, clothes, or context, the average person's first instinct is often to panic, then to try and Google something that doesn't exist yet. But something strange happens when you're stripped of everything. You start remembering what your body already knows. Anthropologists often marvel at how physically adapted early humans were. Barefoot runners, tree climbers, hunters who could track wounded game across open savanna for days. Their brains weren't less than ours, they were just focused elsewhere. On patterns in wind, on animal trails, on the difference between a berry that feeds and one that ends your week. There's debate, of course. Some scholars argue that early humans were tough, but deeply vulnerable. One broken bone, one bad storm, and an entire band could disappear. Others point to the breadth of their migration, the complexity of their tools, their cave art, and say these weren't just survivors. They were innovators, explorers, builders of something more than shelter. You look at your crude shelter, no cave paintings, but a few doodles and charcoal, and smile. It's ugly, but it's yours. A few birds flit through the trees. Their calls are rhythmic, now familiar. The forest has stopped feeling like a threat. It's still dangerous, yes, but now it's a known danger. You know which roots to eat, which logs hide grubs, how to recognize the weight of something watching. You've stopped reacting and started choosing. There's a power in that. Survival, you realize, isn't just about brute force or endless luck. It's about noticing, adjusting, trying, failing, and trying again with fewer mistakes and more patience. It's a quiet kind of resilience. You get to your feet, slowly leaning on the spear. Your leg still aches, but it holds. You walk, limp, pause, hobble. Not graceful, not fast, but forward. In the distance, smoke, not yours. A thin column gray against the blue sky, drifting from behind the ridge. Another fire, another human. Maybe the same group you met before. Maybe not. You consider your options. Stay here, build a better shelter, carve out a life, or go toward the smoke, toward the chance of community. You turn back to your fire, to the bones and tools, and scattered leaves that mark your first days in the Stone Age. It's primitive, messy, a little ridiculous, but you made it. Sort of. The fire crackles. The birds sing. You hoist your spear, take one last breath of forest air, and step forward, limp and all. Whether you survive tomorrow isn't the question. You survived today, and as the sun peaks higher, warming your shoulders, it reminds you of something deeper, that time doesn't need numbers to move us forward. It nudges, glows, hums quietly through instinct. A rhythm, older than memory, waiting to be heard. It begins with light, a soft golden stripe creeping over the rim of the horizon, turning the stone-colored world honey-warm. You stir with the tribe not because you set an alarm, but because a bird has started yelling near your ear. Sunrise is less a clock and more a nudging friend with feathers and a terrible singing voice. There are no numbers here, no tick-tock, but you know it's time to rise. The cold has lifted slightly. Shadows retreat toward the back of the cave. Someone's already started poking the embers from last night's fire, and smoke curls lazily up to the jagged ceiling. In the Paleolithic world, time flows with the sun, and every part of the landscape becomes a subtle reminder. A certain slant of light means it's time to check the traps. A red hue in the sky suggests the foragers should pack a bit faster. Timekeeping is mostly done by your skin goosebumps, mean morning sweat means midday, and an aching chill means you should have already gone to bed. The sleeping arrangements are a little less cozy than memory foam. Maybe you're lying on a dried grass mat wrapped in fur that smells like last season's rain. Your feet might be poking out chilled by morning air slipping through the cave entrance. A distant grunt says someone else is up and possibly annoyed their foot got stepped on in the night. There is no exact scholarly consensus on how early humans structured their sleep or woke up. Some researchers argue for biphasic patterns, 2 short rests split by hours of wakefulness, while others suggest long, uninterrupted slumber, dictated by the darkness and the safety of firelight. What is clear is that the sunrise mattered more than any mechanical dial. The children wake loudest. A sharp squeal. A loud giggle. One of them tries to imitate the bird. Another starts a coughing fit from yesterday's smoky story time. In every generation, toddlers are the world's most chaotic alarm clocks. Outside, the world smells of dew and moss. Insects are just beginning to buzz. Somewhere, a fox pads over cold stones, wondering if the humans left bones again. Overhead, swallows arc across the orange-tinged sky, like punctuation in a poem you don't know how to read. But it still makes sense. Back inside the cave, someone's muttering as they braid a cord from sinew. Someone else is nibbling dried berries. Someone else still is rubbing sleep from their eyes, with a hand that looks more like a carving tool than a cuddler. And yet, there is peace here. an ancient rhythm. 1,000 mornings before this one, 1,000 to follow. The same way you might shuffle to your kettle or stare blankly into the fridge they greeted their morning with habits so old they felt like instincts. No, they didn't check emails, but they did check the sky. And the sky, in its own subtle way, said, "Get up. It's time." The fire has been stirred. Smoke drifts in a lazy spiral, curling around the cave roof, like a forgotten thought. Someone sneezes. Someone grunts. And someone without fail begins their morning stretch with a sound that suggests they've been asleep since the Ice Age itself. Stretching isn't optional, it's survival. When your pillow is a pile of woven grass and your bedmate has elbows like stone tools, every joint needs coaxing. You rise slowly, vertebrae popping like twigs, arms reaching overhead in a silent salute to the sky. Somewhere near the cave entrance, a child mimics you, then loses interest and starts chewing a root instead. Mornings in the Stone Age weren't dramatic. No stampede to a desk, no panicked snoozing of alarms. Just a slow shift from stillness to motion, a tribe unfolding like a set of wings warmed by firelight. You scratch your scalp with one hand, rub ash off your cheek with the other, and eye the pile of foraging baskets like they're judging you. To wake fully, you need movement. A quick walk around the perimeter, maybe, or a short climb up a hill to check if the river has flooded again. There's no coffee, but you nibble something chewy dried root or tough meat. It's more function than flavor. And maybe you spit the stringy bits into the fire where they sizzle like secrets. Some historians believe early humans had a consistent sequence to their morning's rise. Warm up by fire forage for small things while the light grows. Others argue that routines varied wildly, depending on weather predators and whether or not you were part of the cave's elite fire-tending club. There's no universal answer. Only a pattern that reappears again and again in cave sites, bones cracked from marrow baskets, with berry stains, stone blades dulled by daily use. You walk barefoot to the stream. It's cold, and you hiss when it touches your skin. The sun is barely up, casting long shadows across the brush. You cup the water, rinse your face, and start scanning the underbrush. You're not alone. Several others fan out nearby, heads down, hands parting leaves, searching for mushrooms, berries, roots, and edible things you wouldn't trust without a stomach made of leather. Some of the foragers whisper. Some hum. One elderly woman mumbles to herself, reciting what might be a chant or just a list of things she's hoping to find. A boy nearby finds something and squeals too loud, and a sharp gesture from an older hunter quiets him. Noise draws attention, and not the kind with feathers and fruit. Foraging is both skill and gamble. What looks like food may not be. What smells delicious might turn your stomach. You learn by trial error, and sometimes a very bad evening. The trick is not just finding food, but remembering where it was when it ripens and what lives near it. A patch of sweet roots might also be the favorite lounging spot for a large, irritable boar. Quieter now, you squat beside a mossy patch and begin picking. Your fingers move quickly, plucking, testing, discarding. You slide the good bits into a woven pouch at your side, tied from sinew and bark fibers. It smells faintly of yesterday's spoilage and this morning's determination. Behind you, someone has started humming again. It's off-key, but oddly comforting. You hum along without thinking your voice, just another thread in the soft tapestry of the morning. Eventually, you glance toward the sun, now higher and brighter. You stand, stretch again, and begin the slow walk back. The tribe will be gathering soon. Breakfast, if you can call it that, awaits. Dried meat, crushed nuts. A hint of warmth if someone's managed to roast something without burning it. You scratch your head again, yawn once, and return to the cave with your handful of survival. The cave isn't quiet anymore. It's filled with the chaos of waking children, dropped stones clattering wooden bowls, and the occasional frustrated grunt of a parent trying to braid a child's hair with fingers more used to napping flint than untangling knots. The family unit, prehistoric style, is less of a sitcom and more of a symphony one, where the instruments are toddlers and the conductor forgot the baton. You duck back into the space, brushing past a smoky corner where someone is blowing gently into a pile of coals. The embers catch flaring gold, and the faint smell of something vaguely edible fills the air. It's breakfast, or at least an attempt at it. A strip of dried meat softened over the fire. A few nuts. Maybe a surprise snail, or grub for the lucky ones. This cave, dark and low-ceilinged, is your home, not a metaphor. A literal cold, sometimes dripping rock hollow with soot-smudged walls and a pile of shared possessions near the back furs, tools cord berries, and 3 mystery items nobody wants to claim. Family life here is communal by default. No closed doors, no private rooms, and certainly no me time. If one person snores, everyone knows. If a child wets the floor, the smell becomes everyone's problem. And if one toddler learns to walk and immediately starts poking the fire, 6 adults lunge at once. You settle near the fire circle, warming your feet. A young girl is crouched nearby, using a stick to draw something in the ash. A deer, maybe. Or her version of the angry hunter who scolded her yesterday. Another child steals a handful of your foraged berries. You sigh, then toss them a few more. Sharing isn't just kind, it's survival. The more everyone eats, the more everyone has the energy to contribute. Roles are already emerging. One woman tends to the fire almost obsessively. A man with a heavily scarred arm mends a spear shaft with tight-lipped concentration. 2 teenagers bicker over a bone needle who gets to repair their leggings first, and the youngest, barely able to sit up, gurgles on a fur mat while a grizzled elder keeps an eye out between slow blinks. Historians continue to debate how rigid prehistoric family roles were. Some propose clear divisions: men hunted, women gathered. Others argue for more fluid dynamics, especially in small bands, where flexibility mattered more than tradition. There's no cave painting that spells it out. Just the worn spots on the floor, where people sat, the scorched pebbles, from fire circles, the discarded baby teeth found in hearth ash. A shriek cuts through the cave. One child has tried to ride another like a mammoth. The mammoth disagrees. A scuffle ensues, interrupted only when an elder tosses a bone nearby with remarkable aim and a disapproving grunt. You help sort baskets, pass around a drink made from boiled herbs, and swat a fly away from someone's eye. It's not glamorous, but there's a rhythm to it. You know who complains the most, who sneaks bites first, who sings during chores, and who always forgets to cover the drying meat. These patterns make up your morning. Outside the cave, the sun is rising steadily. Light filters through in slanted rays, catching the dust in the air and turning it to gold. The day is stretching open, just like your back did earlier. There are chores to be done, tools to fix, skins to clean, hunting to plan. But for this one moment, you sit with your strange, soot-stained, slightly sticky family, and feel something like peace. Not because everything is calm, but because it's familiar. This is what morning looks like when your world is carved from stone. The mood shifts the moment someone says the word. Not out loud, just a sharp gesture, a pointed glance toward the ridge, and the unmistakable grunt that means hunt. Suddenly, every back straightens. Conversations quiet. Children are nudged to the edges. Today might be the day the tribe brings down something enormous, or gets nothing at all. You feel your chest tighten with anticipation. Not fear exactly, but something primal thrumming in your ribs. This isn't a solo errand. Mammoth hunts require planning precision and a pinch of madness. You eye the hunting party forming near the edge of the clearing, half a dozen figures, lean and layered in stitched hides, checking spears and adjusting leather cords. You grab your own toolkit, a carefully napped flint blade, a throwing spear with bone tip, a sling made from sinew and luck. Always luck. Some hunters rub ash on their arms for protection. Others whisper to stones or kiss feathers. You just take a breath and follow. Mammoths are loud in legend, but quiet in reality. Their massive feet spread the weight-muffling steps. What gives them away is the cracking of branches, the rumble of low communication between herd members, and the unmistakable scent of something enormous that's been eating roots for 8 hours straight. Tracking begins with signs droppings, crushed grass, a torn sapling. One hunter crouches and presses their palm to a flattened patch of earth. Warm. Recently moved through. Another points to a smear on a rock moss scraped clean by a brushing flank. You all nod. The mammoths are close. Some researchers believe these hunts were planned days in advance with scouts following herds for miles. Others suggest spontaneity, a kind of tactical chaos, see mammoth grab friends chase. There is no scholarly agreement on how often the hunt succeeded, or how many ended in bruises and broken ribs. The landscape opens up into a scrubby valley ringed by pines. You crouch in the brush, listening. The wind shifts, and there it is. A deep, snorting breath. Then another. You peer between branches and see them 3 mammoths, shaggy and magnificent, grazing near a glacial stream. This is where it gets quiet. Not silent, your heart is pounding. Birds chirp, but the kind of focused quiet where every motion matters. One hunter signals with their hand a sweeping arc, then 2 fingers pointed at the flanks. You nod. The plan is simple. Flank, distract, isolate, drive it toward the ditch, carved days ago, and camouflaged with sticks. Simple, of course, being a relative term. You move low through the brush, breath tight in your throat. The mammoth lifts its head, pauses, blinks, then returns to chewing. You creep closer, spear-ready sling looped around your wrist. The air smells like wet fur and mud. Then someone moves too quickly. A branch cracks. One mammoth lets out a shrill trumpet and bolts. The others follow, crashing toward the forest. But one stumbles, unsure, circling back. Perhaps the matriarch, slower, more cautious. She's the one you target. What follows is blur and sweat. Yells echo. Spears fly. The mammoth wheels, swinging its tusks. You duck roll, launch a stone from your sling. It glances off her shoulder. She turns, falls. Not dead, but wounded off balance. Another spear finds its mark. It takes all of you. Every muscle, every scream, every inch of cleverness carved from hunger. And eventually she falls. Still. Steam rising from her massive body, blending with your breath in the cold morning light. No one cheers. Not yet. You walk forward, hand trembling, and place your palm on her flank. Warm. Real. Heavy with the strange sorrow of taking a life to feed many. Someone begins the first note of the thank you chant. You join in quietly, the words, old and soft as moss. Back at the cave, the mood has changed. The fire crackles more confidently now, and a scent, meaty, slightly charred, heavy as dusk, drifts through the air like a victory banner. But it's not just about meat. It's about the story. And as twilight paints long shadows on the walls, the real feast begins gossip. You settle near the circle legs, folded beneath you hands, sticky from marrow. Someone just finished retelling the hunt dramatically. The mammoth was as big as a hill this time, and apparently it breathed fire. A child gasps. An elder snorts. Everyone leans closer, drawn not by accuracy, but by the warmth of shared exaggeration. The fire pit becomes the stage. The youngest hunter tries to imitate the mammoth's collapse by falling over, dramatically knocking over a basket. Laughter ripples through the group, like wind through tall grass. Even the elders smile. One of them coughs up a story of their own, about the time a mammoth chase ended with someone falling into a patch of fermented fruit and forgetting the next 2 days entirely. Around the flames, stories are currency. Everyone offers a little what they saw in the sky last night, a dream that felt too real, the strange shape a rock made at sunrise. These aren't just tales. They're warnings, maps, memories, jokes, and magic. Some scholars argue that oral tradition began here around these exact fires. Others think it started earlier in silence with gesture and rhythm. But most agree it was during moments like these, when the day's work was done, when the cave walls flickered with shadow play, that humanity first turned facts into fables. Someone's telling a myth now. You know it by the hush. It begins with a whisper, long ago, before the mammoth forgot how to speak. Everyone quiets. The flames catch on a new log, sending golden sparks skyward, like startled fireflies. The story spins outward about a boy who stole fire from a bird, or a spirit who shaped mountains with her teeth. The myth isn't just for fun. It stitches the tribe together. It explains why the stars blink. It warns what happens if you forget to thank the river. It gives shape to fear, and hope makes sense of thunder and tusks and death. You glance sideways. A teenager is mouthing the story silently, already memorizing it for their turn someday. Across the fire, an elder's eyes are half-shut lips, curled in that knowing smile of someone who's heard this one before and is waiting to see how it's told this time. And of course, gossip isn't all grand. Someone leans over and murmurs about who dropped their spear during the hunt. Someone else cackles and adds that the same person flirted with 2 cave sisters in one day. There's always room for a little prehistoric pettiness. These moments, the firelit teasing, the shared laughter, the gentle roastings, are the glue of the group. It's how humans stay human, when everything else is cold, wet, and trying to kill them. Outside the cave, night has settled. The stars begin to emerge brighter than any torch. You lie back on a fur belly, full headlight with stories. A child is snoring nearby. Someone is still whispering. And the fire crackles on, as it has for thousands of years. If the mammoth meat doesn't last, the stories will. The walls begin to speak. Not with voices, but with lines swooping arcs, handprints, ochre smears, and charcoal shapes that leap from stone like shadows caught mid-movement. You shift closer, watching as someone grinds red earth into powder with the heel of their palm. Tonight, the artists are working. It starts with silence. Then someone lights a torch, its flicker casting gold across the walls. The cave breathes smoke and meaning. A boy leans forward and spits into a small dish, mixing pigment. Beside him, a woman crushes charcoal with a stone. Another fingers a hollowed bone, blowing dust through it in short bursts like a prehistoric airbrush. These are not random doodles. They're practiced, deliberate. The reindeer's curve is elegant. The bison is mid-charge. The mammoth's tusks spiral with drama. You recognize scenes from the hunt stories from last week, even the figure of a known elder with their crooked leg. Art becomes memory and flattery. One of the artists stops to scratch their head, then adds a line, a man falling. Laughter bubbles from the watching group. Ah, that's the hunter who slipped in the stream, immortalized now in pigment and public embarrassment. Archaeologists remain puzzled by the true purpose of cave art. Was it spiritual? Did it guide hunts, act as storytelling graffiti, or pre-linguistic theater? Theories abound. But what's certain is the process itself mattered. People gathered, shared pigment swap stories, and turned stone into storyboards. Children pressed their hands to the walls, blowing pigment around fingers to leave outlines like signatures. One bold child draws something different. A shape not of animal or hunter, but something imagined, a creature with wings or maybe many legs. It's hard to tell. The adults murmur. Maybe it's a spirit. Maybe just a joke. No one scolds. You notice patterns. Animals facing the same direction. Dots near their bellies. Arrows. Maybe a code. Maybe just aesthetics. The line between the two was blurrier back then, and maybe still is. In a corner, someone is adding to a panel you thought was finished. The mammoth now has a calf. The calf has a wide eye. And suddenly the image feels less like a trophy and more like a family portrait. You didn't just conquer it. You understood it. Your fingers itch. Someone passes you a lump of ochre and gestures toward an empty patch. Slowly, you lean forward, heart racing a little, and begin to draw. Not well, but sincerely. You trace the curve of the valley, the stream where you bathed, the hand that reached for you when you slipped. It's all there in smudged rust and shaky lines. When you step back, no one laughs. Someone nods. Another adds a tree beside your stream. Collaboration in pigment. A mural of shared breath and memory. The torch burns lower. The artists slow. Some stretch and wander off to find sleep. Others linger staring at their work, debating whether to add a star or leave it ambiguous. A few mutter about dreams, how last night the bison spoke, and this morning they knew where to hunt. There's no applause, no gallery, but there's something sacred in the stillness that follows. The cave glows faintly with stories now, not spoken ones, but ones you'll see every time you wake. You lie back, watching the shadows dance across the painted walls. These are the world's first artists, not because they were first to draw, but because they were first to remember aloud in color. And even now, with your eyes heavy, you think maybe they painted to stay awake just a little longer before the long sleep begins again. Something brushes against your leg, soft, damp, and sniffing. You blink and look down. It's a wolf pup. Or maybe, not quite. Its ears are too floppy, its eyes too curious, and it seems far too comfortable licking your toes for something that's supposed to be wild. Someone nearby chuckles and tosses the creature a scrap of meat. It catches it midair and flops down happily at your feet. Not a wolf, not a pet yet, but close. This little companion isn't the only one. There are others in the shadows dozing near the fire, scratching behind their ears, alert for dropped bones. The relationship between human and canine is still new here, tentative, experimental, and mostly fueled by leftovers. But it's happening, slowly paws are finding places beside bare feet. Prehistoric people didn't keep pets the way we do. There were no collars, no names etched on clay tags. But evidence suggests a mutual curiosity, wolves drawn by warmth and smells, humans intrigued by animals that didn't run. Some were driven off, others stayed. Some scholars think the first dogs were orphaned pups raised by hand. Others believe it was more practical wolves guarded the camp, and in return, they got scraps. One of the children is trying to teach a pup to sit. It's not going well. The animal wriggles, barks, once, then sprints in a wild arc around the fire and disappears behind a rock. The child chases, half laughing, half exasperated. You smile. Some things really haven't changed. A woman nearby is plucking burrs from a dog's coat with quick fingers. Another pup curls up on a pile of fur, snoring loudly, unconcerned by the dozen humans shuffling past. You reach out to scratch behind its ear. It groans in appreciation, shifts closer, and promptly falls asleep on your ankle. They're not just companions. In time, they'll become fellow hunters, helping track prey, corner game, even warm sleeping bodies during winter nights. But right now, they're awkward, messy bridge builders between species. Little diplomats with wet noses. There's a half-eaten bone by the fire. One of the older dogs eyes it, then looks at you. You nudge it closer. It snatches it with a grunt and trots off, tail wagging like a branch in wind. You've just made a friend. You hear someone telling a story how the moon once had a brother, a wild beast, who howled so loudly it cracked the sky. When he was cast down, he chose to follow humans instead of fading away. That's why dogs howl, the storyteller concludes. They remember the sky. Whether true or not, it makes sense. These creatures are both grounded and mysterious, so common now, but once a miracle. A wild animal that didn't want to eat you. A mouth full of teeth that offered warmth instead of danger. You stretch your legs. The pup doesn't move. You shift again. Still no reaction. Eventually you give up and lie back, a living weight on your foot, a distant howl echoing from the forest edge. Not a threat, just a reminder that wildness isn't so far away. But for tonight, part of it has chosen your fire. Somewhere deep in the dark, another pair of eyes watches. Another wolf. Not ready yet. Maybe never. But perhaps generations from now, its pups will curl up beside your descendants' noses, twitching in dreams of mammoths and firelight. You glance at the sleeper on your ankle and wonder not what it dreams, but whether deep down it already knows it belongs here. You notice the wind before you notice the smell. Sharp, dry, faintly sour, like old leather left in the sun. It means someone is scraping hides again. You follow the scent to the edge of camp, where 3 people crouch near stretched animal skins, pulling at them with stone tools in rhythmic scraping strokes. The noise is subtle but constant, like someone whispering with sandpaper. Clothing isn't optional here. Not because of modesty, there are no shameful elbows in the Stone Age, but because the weather demands it. A chill wind can turn a bare arm into a liability, and rough terrain isn't kind to tender feet. So you wear animals, deer elk, hair mammoth, if you're lucky. Not just their skins, but their sinew, their bones, their breath. Someone nearby is sewing. Their needle is a shard of bone, and the thread is sinew stretched in dried gut that slips surprisingly smoothly through drilled holes in hide. They work fast, fingers, calloused mouth pinched in concentration. The garment they're mending looks like a tunic, patched so many times it tells its own story. Tears from brambles, soot marks from cooking a faded red smear that might be berry juice or something less edible. Across from them, a child tries on a fur hood too large for their head. It slips down over their eyes, and they bump into a basket. Laughter erupts. Someone tosses a length of hide over the child's shoulders like a cape declaring them the king of itchy shoulders. The new monarch reigns for 2 minutes before tripping over a root and abdicating dramatically. Early clothing was functional but creative. Skins were cut to wrap the body tied with cords layered for warmth. Some were decorated with bead shells or tiny teeth. Others bore simple symbols scratched into the surface, perhaps marking ownership, family, or just a preference for mammoth over deer. There is no scholarly agreement on how decorative prehistoric clothing was. Some researchers argue for utility above all. Others point to the symbolic elements, painted designs, tassels, dyes, as evidence that self-expression was always stitched into the seams of survival. A young woman holds up a new garment, freshly sewn leggings with bark fiber trim. She smiles faintly and hands them to an elder, who grunts in approval before pulling them on. They fit. Well enough, at least. Someone claps. The woman blushes, then goes right back to scraping another hide. You spot a small pile of discarded bits, tiny scraps of fur, half-split sinew, flakes of stone. Even waste has purpose. Someone will use that fur to insulate a pouch, the sinew to patch a sling, the flakes to hone a blade's edge. Nothing is truly thrown away. When everything takes effort, everything is valued. In a quieter corner, a man is dyeing cloth, rubbing crushed berries into bark fiber, staining it a faint purple. He hums softly more to the dye than himself. Next to him, a small girl uses a stick to draw shapes in the ground, a tree, a hand, a sun. Then she stabs her drawing with the stick and declares the sun too hot. You nod in solemn agreement. The wind picks up. Everyone instinctively tugs at their hoods, pulls furs closer, tightens knots. No one complains. This is the daily fabric of life, woven from muscle patience and a deep understanding of what warmth costs. And when you look down at your own clothing, crudely stitched, slightly damp, faintly pungent, you realize it's not just something you wear. It's something someone made, from something that once breathed. A reminder that warmth has a story too. A hollow hum drifts through the dusk, soft, low, and oddly rhythmic. Not speech, not song, but something in between. You follow the sound until you find its source, a teenager sitting cross-legged near the fire, blowing gently across a small, hollowed-out bone. The sound deepens, then warbles slightly, and someone nearby begins tapping a rhythm on a flat rock with 2 sticks. Music in the Stone Age is neither polished nor planned. It doesn't follow scales or keys. It rises from instinct, the need to express mimic echo. And it doesn't require instruments carved with care. A rib bone becomes a flute. A log becomes a drum. A reed plucked from a riverbank makes a whistle sharp enough to startle birds. Others begin to join in. A woman strikes a dried gourd, filled with pebbles against her palm. A boy claps sticks together with gleeful irregularity. An elder simply hums low and gravelly, occasionally interrupted by a cough. You pick up 2 small stones and tap them gently, trying to find the beat. There may not be one. Music here isn't performance, it's play, prayer, punctuation. It signals joy, or mourning, or nothing at all, just the simple delight of sound layered on sound. The child who spilled berries this morning is now spinning in awkward circles, feet slapping the dirt arms wide. The pup from earlier barks twice, then howls unintentionally, becoming the evening's lead singer. Archaeologists have uncovered flutes made from vulture bones dating back over 40,000 years. Some are tuned well enough to play modern notes. Others seem random. Scholars debate whether these were instruments for ritual for storytelling or simply for fun. What they agree on is that the desire to make noise, beautiful, strange, deliberate noise, has echoed through humanity for longer than we've had writing. Someone taps a rhythm that resembles a heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub-dub. You match it with your stones. Another pairs it with a rising hum, then a break, then a whistle. Before long, a dozen people are involved, some active, some simply swaying. The fire joins in, crackling its approval. In a quiet moment, someone adds voice. Not lyrics, not really. Just a long, vowel-filled note that rises and falls like wind slipping through a canyon. It's beautiful. It's raw. It makes your spine tingle in a way that has nothing to do with cold. And then comes the laughter. A misstep, a fumble, a burst of giggles from the child who tried to use a shell as a horn and accidentally spit into their own eye. The rhythm dissolves. The group collapses into joyful chaos. The music breaks, but the mood stays. You settle beside one of the elders who's polishing a drumskin with fat. He nods at your stones, then gently takes one and taps it on his own knee, recreating a rhythm you hadn't realized you'd made earlier. He nods again, satisfied, and hands it back. Music may not last long out here. The rain will wash away the echoes. The fire will die. The reeds will dry up. But tonight, it's everything. A shared voice made from sticks and wind and bone. You lie back again, the rhythm still playing behind your eyelids. Somewhere in the dark, someone hums. Somewhere further, something howls. And above you, the stars begin to join the song, each one a silent note holding the beat of the world. A rustle, then a shout, then laughter too shrill to belong to adults. The children are awake again, though to be fair, they were never really asleep. Not the way adults sleep. They're feral bundles of legs and giggles. And now they've decided the morning hunt wasn't exciting enough. It's time to play. One has a stick and declares it a spear. Another disagrees and insists it's a magic staff. A third doesn't care and uses it to draw loops in the dirt. The game's rules change every minute, and yet everyone plays along as if born knowing the logic. You watch from a log, amused. There's a pile of rocks nearby, perfect for stacking, hiding, throwing gently, or pretending they're berries for an invisible feast. A girl with wild hair lines them up, solemnly assigns each a name, then scolds one for stealing the good moss. The accused rock looks unrepentant. Children in the Paleolithic era didn't have toys as we know them, but they had imagination, and that's always been the better resource. A few carved figurines have been found in ancient settlements, some shaped like animals, others like humans or half-human hybrids. Some researchers think they were dolls. Others say ritual objects. Then again, maybe those two things weren't so different back then. One boy runs past, wearing a deer skull on his head, trailing a length of vine like a cape. Another child barks trying to be a dog, or a wolf, or maybe a dog pretending to be a wolf. It's unclear. What's clear is the joy, the way dirt-smudged feet stamp down myths, how pebbles become prizes, how every shadow hides a potential quest. There's a game underway now that seems to involve 3 goals: capture the sacred egg, a cracked turtle shell, dodge the angry bird goddess, played by a 5-year-old with a stick and shout as loudly as possible without getting scolded. It's going very well. Play has purpose here. It's not just noise and chaos. It teaches skills, tracking, hiding, throwing, teamwork, storytelling. It helps the children learn how to be part of a group, to take turns, to bluff, to scheme. A tiny boy just outwitted two older girls by pretending to cry, then snatching the sacred egg and sprinting into a bush. An elder watches half dozing, a fond smile tugging at their lips. They've seen this before. Every season, every group of children reinvents the same dozen games, adding twists and rules that make sense only to them. When the hunters return, breathless and blood-smeared, these same children will watch, imitate, pretend. Tomorrow their mammoth will be a half-burnt log, dragged around by 3 determined players and 1 skeptical pup. Scholars still argue whether Paleolithic play was structured or spontaneous. Some point to traces of ball-like objects made from bundled hide. Others say evidence is too scarce to tell. But what survives always is the behavior small humans imitating big ones, preparing not just for survival, but for memory, for community, for story. You rise and join in tossing a moss-covered rock to the self-declared egg guardian. They squeal and drop it. The angry bird goddess cheers. You've shifted the balance. For a moment, you are no longer an observer. You're part of the mayhem. And it's worth it. Because laughter echoes longer than language. And the best games are the ones that forget how to end. It starts with a glance, then a nudge, then the kind of bashful shoulder scratching that means someone has feelings and doesn't quite know what to do with them. Welcome to prehistoric romance, where seduction involves fewer roses and more roasted roots. 2 young people hover near each other at the edge of the firelight. He offers her a bit of honeycomb. She accepts, but doesn't smile. Not right away. She waits, then nods. He grins. Somewhere nearby, someone whistles and gets elbowed by an elder. Everyone pretends not to notice what's happening and notices every second of it. Courtship here isn't a dramatic dance. There are no sonnets, no engraved lockets, no dramatic declarations. Under balconies, caves tend to lack balconies. But there are rituals, gifts, shared tasks, maybe even shared jokes. You impress someone by carrying the heavier load, remembering where the good roots are, or not eating the best part of the mammoth tongue. Younger members of the tribe often pair off, subtly sitting close when working, lingering after chores, offering the last bit of marrow. Love isn't announced. It's insinuated through small kindnesses, accidental touches, and the careful offering of the driest sleeping spot. One of the boys near you has been obsessively carving something for days, a small pendant made from bone, smoothed to a near gloss, with hours of sanding. Today, he hands it to a girl without a word. She examines it, turns it over, then slips it over her neck. That's it. No ceremony. But the way they sit together afterward, just close enough for their shoulders to touch, is louder than any wedding. Archaeological evidence suggests that romantic bonds were often practical alliances. Pairing up wasn't always about passion. It meant shared labor, more eyes to watch for danger, and more stable child-rearing. But emotional attachment wasn't excluded. Even in burial sites, some skeletons are found positioned together, hands entwined. Some scholars believe early human love stories were more transactional. Others argue that poetry existed long before writing, just carved into glances instead of tablets. There is no consensus. But there is plenty of speculation, especially when cave drawings show pairs dancing under stars, or figurines are found in twos, smoothed by generations of handling. Back at the fire, the couple sits in a way that says, "We're not a couple, unless you think we are, in which case, yes." Someone starts humming, a teasing song. The girl rolls her eyes. The boy hides a smile. The tribe pretends not to giggle. Nearby, two older members grumble about how courtship used to mean something, then recount how they once shared a lizard stew behind a cliff and were together ever since. A child asks if that's romantic. The elder shrugs. It was warm, they reply. You watch as the couple stands and heads out to check the meat drying racks together. Very responsible, very not a date. Their hands brush. For just a moment they hold. Love here isn't always loud, but it lingers. In the way people share furs, in how someone carves a comb from antler, in how two people sleep a little closer than necessary, not for warmth, but because they can. As the fire crackles and night wraps tighter around the camp, someone murmurs an old line from a myth. She followed him through the forest, not because he asked, but because he remembered where her favorite berries grew. And somehow, that's more romantic than any poem. You hear the cough before you see him. Deep dry echoing slightly in the cold air. The elder shifts on his fur mat bones, creaking louder than the fire crackles. His hair is white, tangled like old roots, and his skin is lined in a way that makes the cave's walls look young by comparison. But when he speaks, everyone listens. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. His words are slow measured, with long pauses that feel like punctuation carved in stone. He's telling a story you've heard before, something about the sun being trapped in a bear's cave. But tonight, it sounds different. Maybe it's the way he smacks his lips before every name or the sideways glance he gives the youngest listeners, like he's daring them not to believe. Elders aren't just respected here. They're treasured. Not because of rank, but because of recall. They know which roots cure fever, which rocks crumble in frost, where the mammoths used to walk before the floods. They remember how things used to smell, how someone laughed before they were buried. They are the tribe's memory made human. A little girl sits beside him now, eyes wide, hands clutched around her ankles. She asks what the stars are. Without hesitation, the elder replies, "The teeth of the old gods scattered when they yawned too wide." The child nods, accepting this as both fact and bedtime fable. Not every culture treated age the same. Some scholars suggest early human groups revered their elders deeply, placing them at the center of community life. Others argue the frailty of old age in harsh climates often led to more pragmatic, less sentimental outcomes. The truth, as usual, likely lay in between, reverence tempered by survival. But here this evening, the elder is a star himself. Fading maybe, but still shining. Another elder sits silently nearby, weaving cord with fingers that never stop moving. She hasn't spoken in hours, but every few minutes she glances at the speaker, nods faintly, or raises an eyebrow when he strays too far from accuracy. She is the unofficial fact-checker, and everyone respects her for it. You move closer, not wanting to miss anything. He's describing the sound a cave lion makes before it leaps. Like thunder swallowing a bone, he says. He closes his eyes. Then, after a long pause, adds, "Of course, that was long ago, back when I still had knees." Laughter ripples through the group, not loud, but warm. You glance around and see others leaning in. One of the middle-aged hunters sits cross-legged, watching intently, nodding with every phrase. Another young adult mimics the elder's hand gestures like learning a secret language. There's something powerful in the way old people speak when they know no one will interrupt. And they don't just tell stories, they transmit wisdom. Where to build a fire when the wind is strange? What bird calls mean a storm? Which caves hold echoes that lie? Every lesson is wrapped in a tale, every rule hidden inside a memory, not because they want to be mysterious, but because it helps people remember. Eventually, the elder coughs again and signals the end of the tale with a wave of his hand. No formal goodbye, just a grunt, a sigh, and a small smile. He leans back into his furs, already drifting somewhere between waking and dream. You sit for a moment digesting not just the story, but the presence of someone who remembers a world you can't return to. And maybe that's the point. He's a bridge between now and before. And as long as someone listens, nothing is lost. They carry the body carefully, not because it's fragile, though it is, but because it matters. The tribe moves in quiet, deliberate steps, as if the earth itself is watching. A fur-wrapped figure rests on a wooden litter, decorated with feathers, smooth stones, and dried herbs that fill the air with a bittersweet scent. Death is not sudden here. It's known, expected, understood in a way that modern minds often resist. When someone stops breathing, they don't vanish. They simply move into memory, into soil, into something else entirely. And tonight, that journey begins. The burial site is a short walk from the cave, along a ridge beneath a sloping tree, beside a patch of wildflowers that bloom in strange weather. It's not a graveyard. It's just a place that feels right. The stones are warm here. The wind moves gently. You help lower the body into a shallow pit lined with grass and bark. A few members kneel and begin placing gifts, a flint blade, a woven bracelet, a chunk of salt. A child steps forward trembling and sets down a smooth pebble with a spiral carved into it. It had belonged to the elder. The tribe does not ask her to explain. Everyone already understands. Archaeological evidence of prehistoric burials shows a wide variety of rituals. Some bodies are curled like sleepers, others stretched as if in flight. Many are buried with tools, beads or bones shaped like animals. There is no scholarly consensus on what these meant. Were they offerings, tokens? Or just favorite objects meant to keep the dead company? A man begins humming. Low, slow. The kind of sound that makes your chest ache, even if you don't know why. Another joins in. Then another. Soon the whole group is humming together, their voices forming a single note that rises and falls like breath. The body is covered in earth. Not shoveled, but layered handful by careful handful. The final handful is always placed by the one who knew them best. Tonight that's a sister. She murmurs something and presses her forehead to the mound before stepping back into the circle. There's a pause. Then from somewhere in the group, a new sound, a short, sharp call, a signal, not of sorrow, but of release. The call is echoed by another further away. It's part of the ritual, a way of announcing to the world, and perhaps to the spirit, that the journey is complete. Death is a teacher here. It reminds you of how much was shared. It forces quiet, reflection. You think of the stories that elder told, the way he could identify mushrooms by smell alone, how he laughed when someone burned the mammoth tongue, how he always saved the last dried fig for the smallest child. And you realize the body is buried, but the person, he's already alive again in mimicked jokes, remembered paths, and the shape of the drum someone carved using his old tool. Later by the fire, people talk about dreams. Some believe the dead visit in sleep. Others say dreams are how the soul learns where to go next. A young boy insists he saw the elder riding a giant bird into the sky yelling about soup. No one corrects him. Everyone smiles. As the night deepens, someone scatters a handful of ash into the wind. so he can follow the smoke, they say. You watch it drift upward, spiraling toward stars that feel a little closer now. You lie back blinking. The wind cools your cheeks. The earth is still, and somewhere not far away, memory takes root. They're packing again, not frantically methodically. You can tell by the way they tie bundles with braided cord, how they sort dried meat from fresh, how each person checks and rechecks the straps on their fur packs. It's not panic, it's preparation. The season has changed, and with it, the need to move. Migration is not dramatic. There's no ceremony, no speeches, no long goodbyes. Just a silent agreement, it's time. The game is thinned. The roots have gone bitter. The wind smells different. And besides, the cave's been colder lately, colder than usual, as if it's urging you on. This isn't the first time. It won't be the last. Your people have followed the seasons for as long as memory stretches. South in winter, north in spring, toward the rivers when the salmon run, away from them when the insects hatch. Movement is not inconvenience, it's survival. You roll up a fur mat and lash it tight. A child runs past, dragging a stick with feathers on it, pretending to scout ahead. Behind them, a woman wraps smoked fish in leaves, murmuring to herself, counting in a rhythm only she understands. Scholars studying Paleolithic migration patterns have traced ancient footprints across entire continents. Some families moved hundreds of miles a year. Others stayed near a seasonal circuit of caves and rivers. Bones, tools, pollen samples, all clues pointing to lives in motion. It's clear that humans rarely stayed put for long. The world changed too quickly for that. Someone points to the sky. A thin line of birds glides in perfect formation, southbound. The tribe pauses, watches, then nods. Nature is confirming what everyone already knows. The old cave is nearly empty now. Only scraps remain: a burned stick, a forgotten sling, a smear of red on the wall where a child once drew a lopsided deer. You run your fingers over the cave painting, feeling the texture of pigment, the memory of last month's laughter. Then you turn and leave it behind. The path is familiar, worn by countless feet. Rocks smooth underfoot. The trees arch above like green ribs. The tribe moves in a loose line, some ahead, scouting for obstacles or shelter. Others trail behind, checking for stragglers or discarded tools. You find yourself in the middle, close enough to hear conversations, far enough to feel alone with your thoughts. Someone is singing. A soft chant paced to the rhythm of walking. It's not about anything in particular, just syllables strung together for comfort. A few join in. You don't know all the words, but you hum along anyway. You pass the stone where the river turns, the clearing where a bear once wandered too close, the slope where a child broke a tooth chasing a squirrel. The forest isn't empty, it's dotted with your history. Eventually, the group stops at a ridge. Ahead lies a valley green and gold in the light, with a stream running through it like a silver thread. Someone calls out, "There's a good rock overhang. Dry, high ground, safe." Relief ripples through the group like a shared breath. Packs are lowered, fires are planned. You begin unpacking, laying out the tools, checking for damage. A boy discovers a cluster of mushrooms and yells triumphantly. Someone else finds a smooth stone and immediately starts carving. This new place isn't home. Not yet. But it will be. Within a day, there'll be soot on the rocks. Within a week, stories echo in the air. Within a month, someone will paint the walls. And when it's time, you'll leave again. But for now, you rest. Feet aching. Shoulders sore. heart full of the comfort that comes from not being lost only in motion. Night has fallen again, but it feels different now, quieter, more complete. The fire burns low, a warm eye in the dark. You lie on your side, wrapped in furs, listening to the steady breath of those around you. Humans' dogs whined. Everything is calm. Everything is waiting for sleep. You don't fall asleep quickly. Most of your people don't. Not because of fear, though some still watch the shadows, but because night is a sacred time. A time to remember, to imagine, to slip into the space between worlds. Dreams aren't dismissed here. They're respected. They are messages, warnings, sometimes even answers. Someone mumbles nearby, a child, half dreaming, half talking. You can't make out the words, but you hear your name. Then silence again, thick as fur. You shift slightly, your body sore, from walking, your mind heavy from remembering. A woman near the fire hums softly, a lullaby. Not in words, but in breathy tone and repetition. It circles around the group like a thread, weaving through ears and thoughts. You close your eyes and let it carry you. Sleep doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, starts with limbs growing heavy. Then the awareness of your breath. Then the strange moment where your thoughts aren't quite yours anymore. Where you are no longer in your body, but elsewhere, on a hunt in a memory chasing stars. In this world, dreams matter. When you wake and say, "I saw a bear wearing feathers," people listen. They nod. They wonder what it means. Was it a warning? A blessing? A nudge toward the next cave? Elders recall similar dreams. Someone once dreamed of rain, and it arrived. Another dreamed of a crack in the earth, and later it opened. Modern science calls this pareidolia pattern, recognition, symbolic thought. But for you, here in this night, dreams are simply part of the truth. Scholars have long debated the origins of spiritual life. Many point to dreams as one of the first sacred experiences. You can't control them. They come unbidden, filled with people, long gone, animals that speak impossible places. In a world without books, without written prayers, the dream was the first sacred text. The fire pops. A soft sound, but it pulls your mind upward for a moment. You blink. The cave wall glows with dying light. Shapes flicker, some from earlier paintings, some from your own imagination. A deer moves, then becomes a shadow, then becomes nothing. Someone stirs, then settles again. The dog at your feet sighs. You remember a story told earlier about the first dream. How a child fell asleep beside the fire and traveled to the sky, met a creature with 6 eyes, and brought back the song that keeps the rain away. No one questions it. Why would they? The world is wide, bigger than you can see, and some parts only come at night. Your eyes close again, this time deeper. The sounds blur. Your breath slows. You think you see a mammoth again, walking across a snowy plain. But it's not running. It's just walking, like you were earlier. Maybe it's not a memory. Maybe it's an invitation. And slowly, gently, you surrender. To the dark, to the warmth, to the long sleep. So if you ever wondered what prehistoric people did all day, the answer is, they lived. They watched the skies, hunted, painted, laughed, remembered. They played, they loved. And when the sun dipped low, they curled into one another, under skins and stories, and they dreamed. Just like you will now.